Okay, so today we're going to start working with our graphing calculators a little bit and learning how to use them. So first I want to go over a few things, and then you're going to do a couple of pages in the book, page 135 and page 153. But before you start on that, I would like to show you a few of the buttons and what they do, and do a couple of problems with you, and then you can get started. So first thing I want you to see is this mode button right here. Let's press the mode button, and it's going to give you all these different options. We're going to be on the classic, not math print. We don't use math print. We're going to be in the normal mode, not scientific or English. Scientific, I'm sure you probably use that in chemistry or something, biology maybe. And then this next one, it tells you where it's going to round. So it's either going to float, which is where we want it to be, because that means that it's going to give us a lot of different decimals. Or you can have 0 decimals, 1 decimal, 2, 3, 4, however many. Keep it on the float though, so that it won't round it for you. That way you will be able to round it and you'll get a better answer. Then we're going to be using degrees. Radians is for another math class. We're on function because that's the kind of graphing we're doing. We're graphing functions. And then this next line just talks about what kind of line you're going to have on your screen. I have the next one on simultaneous because that means that when you graph, you're going to graph the lines at the same time, not one after the other. That one takes too long, so I like to have it on simultaneous. The next one is talking about what kind of numbers we're using. We're using real numbers. This a plus bi is imaginary, which we're not there yet. And then the next line talks about the axis, the graph axis that we're going to be using, a full, horizontal, or graph and table. So not everybody has this full mode screen like this with all these different options. I have the TI-84 Plus Silver Edition, which this one is a couple of years old, even in of itself. So if you have a newer calculator, you might have more options than what I have. If you have an older calculator, you might have less. But they're both going to, whatever you have is going to work fine, as long as it's a TI 83 or 84. If you have a Casio, then I'm not real familiar with those, so we're going to have to figure that out. But some of the things that we do with the TI is similar to what the Casio does, so you might be able to, by watching what I'm doing with the TI-84 or 83, you might be able to figure out what to do with the Casio. Okay, so looking at these buttons up here, underneath your screen, you have a Y equals, which is the button we push when we want to type in an equation. And this window tells you the parameters of your graphing window. Zoom lets you go in and out. Trace lets you trace, put in a specific X that you want to figure out the value of. And then this graph is the key that you press when you want to see the graph of the equation you type in. We're not going to be using all of these buttons right now. We're just going to be using a few so you can get kind of used to it. Okay, so on page 135, let's look at the first problem. And I'm going to let that screen go dark, and then whenever I'm ready, we'll press on again and type in the equations. Okay, so here are my two equations, and I'm going to solve the system by graphing. So I'm going to type the equations into the calculator and see where they intersect, find the solution of the set. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to rewrite both of these equations in slope-intercept form. And that's because my equation screen starts with y equals. So that's how I want my equation to read. So I can just go ahead and type in whatever the rest of the equation is. So first thing, I'm going to subtract 2x. Okay, and then divide everything by 4, so I'll have y all by itself. So I have y equals negative 1/2 x plus 9. And that's my first equation. Now in this next equation, I'm going to do the same thing. I want to manipulate it around to where it's in slope-intercept form. So I'm going to add the 5x, okay, and divide by 10. So I get y equals 1/2 x for my equation. All right, so let's go to your calculator and let's press that y equals button. And we have that screen where you can type in lots of different equations. So I'm going to type in this first one. Now whenever you type in an equation that begins with a negative number, you have to use the negative sign at the bottom of your calculator. Do not use the minus sign. It'll mess your calculator up. It won't be able to read it, and it'll say error, or it'll just won't work for you. So you need to make sure and type in the negative at the bottom when you're starting your equation with a negative. Now also, since it's a fraction, I'm going to use parentheses so that it keeps that negative 1/2 all together, and it makes it a coefficient for the x instead of negative 1 over 2x. I don't want the x to be attached to the denominator. Okay, and the next thing is, I just want to show you where the variable button is. It's right next to the alpha key. It has x first, and then it has a few other different variables. We're just going to use the x. Okay, so I'm going to press parenthesis, which is underneath the cosine, the negative button, 1 divided by 2, and then I'm going to press the variable button, so there's an x, plus 9, and I'm not spacing anything, I'm just typing it all in together. Okay, and then enter. So there's your first equation. Now I'm going to type in the next one. I already have the y equals, parentheses, 1 divided by 2, parentheses, x. You got to remember to put that variable down. Sometimes I used to forget and it would give me a horizontal line, which is not what I want. Okay, and press enter on that one. So you have your two equations. Now let's press graph, and we'll see here come the two lines. And there they intersect, so that's the solution. Okay, so I need to figure out what that point is. Where do they intersect? So I'm going to show you one way to do that, and as we go throughout the year, you're going to find other ways to solve these problems also, but I'm going to show you one method right now. So above this graph button, it says table. Okay, so I'm going to press the second function key, which is that blue key, and then I'm going to press table or graph, and it gives me a table of values. So it gives me one x value, but then two y values because they're talking about different lines. Okay, but this is really convenient because what I can do is I can look down these y values until I get to the y values that are the same. And they're down right there. So I have 9, 4.5, 9, 4.5. And that is your point of intersection. That is the place where those two lines cross that we saw. So in this case, since they are giving you values on that table that are decimals, go ahead and write decimals for your answers. That's okay. You don't need to try to change it into fractions. Okay? So that's going to be your solution. Now on your paper, when you're doing these problems, you do not have to show the graph for page 135. But I do want to see where you take the equation and rewrite it into slope-intercept form and then write your answer, okay? So this is what you want to show on your work. Then use your calculator to type it in, get your solution, and write it down. Okay, so let's go to the next page, 153 in your book. That was page 135. Now we're going to look at page 153. So this one says use a graphing calculator to solve each system of inequalities. So now we're going to do inequalities. Okay, so let's go back to the y equals, and I'm going to clear both of those things. So see it's flashing on the first one. I'm just going to press the clear button, and it clears out that equation. Then arrow down to the next one, press the clear button again. Now you have them both gone. So these are all your, when I say arrow, these are all your arrow buttons right here. Up, down, left, right. So they help you move around your calculator without erasing numbers or changing things. You can just move your little cursor around. All right, so let me change my paper here. Gonna get a new paper. Okay, so let's look at the first pair of inequalities, and we're going to graph those. And then you can use your calculator to help you draw your graph on your paper. So you are going to need some graph paper for this one. Okay, you are going to be drawing your lines on this one and shading, but you're going to use your calculator to help you figure it all out. So hopefully it'll be, fun to you and less work. Okay, so first thing is, these are inequalities as compared to what you have on the screen right now. You have equal signs right now. So you can change your equations so that they're inequalities. Okay, so some of these calculators are different. It might not be exactly like this, but it's going to be similar. So you just need to kind of play with your calculator and figure out what works for yours, for your own calculator. So I'm going to be using these arrow buttons. First thing I want to do is I want to get the flashing cursor to go behind the Y. So I'm going to use that left arrow and go behind the Y. So now it's flashing on the other side of the Y. Okay, now press enter. Now some of you guys, the sign behind the Y is going to be changing. And some of you are going to have something like this come up, where you can change the color of the line. Okay, arrow down to the next one. When it goes to line, now this means you can change it so that it's an inequality or an equation. So what I'm going to do is, to change it, I'm going to press enter. Actually, I'm going to press the arrow button here. The right one. Okay, so let's press the arrow. And now it's a thicker line. Some of you guys need to press enter. Some of you need to press the arrow. If it's flashing behind, press enter. If you're like this on the screen, press the arrow. So let's press the arrow again. Now that upper triangle means greater than. Okay, so that is what you'd want to go with if it was a greater than. The lower arrow, or the lower triangle, means less than. Let's just go through all of them. And then you have this key, and that's what would appear on your graph if you're going to use that. Your that little circle thing would go across your screen, and that's how it would draw the line. Okay, and then same thing here. It would just have that little arrow circle going across your screen. So this is dotted lines, and that's smaller dotted lines. Okay, and then you're back to what you started with, the line. Okay, so I want to, my first inequality is greater than. Now the thing is with this, it doesn't, for mine anyway, now yours might be different, but mine only does greater than or equal to. It doesn't do the dotted line. So you're going to have to remember, if it's dotted, draw the dot, if it's only greater than or only less than, you have to draw the dotted part. So you still have to use your brain. Okay, so the first one is Y is greater than 3. This is greater than. So I'm going to press enter and OK. And now I have it set on greater than. So I'm going to type in there the 3. So I'm going to arrow back over to the other side and press 3, enter. So now I'm going to do the same thing with the next one. This one's less than though. So I'm going to go back before the Y. Press enter, go down to the line, and I'm going to go to less than. There's less than. Press enter, enter. Okay, now I'm going to type in that equation. Now this inequality starts with a negative, so I want to start with that negative at the bottom of the calculator. Negative x plus 1, enter. And I have my equations or inequalities typed in. Now let's press graph. So for the Y is greater than 3, you get this blue shaded region. For the Y is less than or equal to negative x plus 1, you get the red shaded region. And the solution of the two graphs is this little tiny part here. Okay, so that's what you would need to graph. You would put this whole thing is what you need to graph. You need to show both shaded parts and where it overlaps. Now, if you can't tell where it is, what points are being used, you can always go to your table. So press second graph, and you can look at your table of values and get some points from that, and that'll help you with your lines. Okay, so I'm going to let you guys play with your calculator. Page 135 and page 153. You're going to do all on both pages, 10 on one page, 9 on the other page, and I hope that you find it kind of fun.